Go ahead, Michelle.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on tonight for the 2021 budget workshop. If you will all please stand if you're able and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance
to the flag of the
United States of America
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for which
which
it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will now turn this budget workshop over to Dr. Arthur.
Thank you, President Ball. Just want to remind everyone that might be watching out on our YouTube channel that this is a budget workshop. It is not a regular budget meeting or regular school board meeting that will actually start at 6:30. But this meeting is an opportunity for us as school administration to communicate to the board on an important topic. And throughout the school year, we will often have, not often, but occasionally we will have a workshop where there's a topic that we need to spend some significant time sharing information with them. And so there won't be any votes during this time. And this is not a meeting in which public participation occurs. It simply is a time in which the administration shares information with the board. There will be pieces down the road in which we will ask them to vote on some things related to finances and the budget. But at this point, this is just an informational session. So I'm going to turn things over to our Director of Business Affairs, Jeremy Ogden, and he's going to walk us through some finance pieces and get us started on our budget work.
Thank you, Dr. Arthur, and thank you, board. I appreciate you having me this evening. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
So in just a second, I'll switch over to our slide presentation that has been previously shared with you. But before we get into the presentation a little bit, obviously we all find ourselves in unique circumstances with COVID, and that also impacts the budget and how we build a budget and the revenue that may be coming in and just different things that may come up down the road. So we'll hit on a few of those in just a minute. But again, thank you for having me. And I'm going to switch over to our presentation real fast. So give me just a second. Are you guys able to see yet?
Yes.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
You can? Okay.
Yes. I can.
Okay. Are you guys good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So first and foremost, I mentioned COVID it's going to have an impact not only on the 2021 budget, but future budgets for a couple of different reasons. Number one, the amount of revenue that we might have coming in because of COVID. So the first thing that we looked at when we started building the budget was our current enrollment that's also tied to ADM. So ADM is going to be the number of kiddos that we have coming in when we do count date. With that, there's some uncertainty in when count date will actually take place. So the projections that we're hearing will be December. So that gives us a little bit of time to see what enrollment looks like. Some of those kiddos that may be, virtual or waiting to enroll. So that was one of the big things that we took into account when I was working on building the 2021 budget. So enrollment, ADM, and what that looks like. So the big thing with the December count date is, we're going to be getting funds based off of previous count date. And then come January, if the December count date happens, then what they'll do is go in and kind of make adjustments to the money that we already received. So again, the December count date is going to be really, really big. It's going to be important that we have a lot of kiddos in the seats and that we can get as much money for those kids as we can so that we can make sure that we're good to go moving forward. The second thing is state funding. So right now they're tossing around an 85%, 100% kind of scenario to where 85% of kiddos who are online only, we would only receive funding for them. The second thing would be obviously 100%. We would want, to be 100% funded, for those kids that we have with our ADM count. So depending on any kids that may be online learning, we may only get 85% for those kids. But again, nothing's been decided, but we're hoping for 100% so that we can move forward. The next thing, assessed value. We have not received our assessed value for 2021 yet. I'm hoping to have that by Friday, but the good thing about that is I can use last year's projection and make some calculations to make sure that we're in a good spot with our AV and those funds that will be coming in for the 2021 budget. CTE, so Career Technical Education. Dr. Arthur is actually going to speak more to this during his presentation tonight at 6:30. But I just wanted to touch on it briefly as one of those kind of small things that's related to COVID-19 that may impact the 2021 budget when I was developing that. And that goes to some of those students that may be online learning, not getting full funding for those students. So those 4 bullet points right there were really big in the 2021 budget that I was working on and that we've finalized. And again, later on, we'll be doing another budget seminar for the public to come and have public comment on. And then obviously later in October, we will vote on that budget, you will, so that we can move forward and get everything moving. Next slide. So this is just kind of some general school finance 101. So obviously, the budget changed and we're looking at 3 different funds that we have for the 2021 budget, which was the same as last year. The first thing, education
fund. You're a little bit behind on your slide.
Sorry.
We're on the 4 bullet points.
There you go. Are you good there?
There we go.
Yep, should be good there. Okay, so the education fund, sorry, I've got you guys in front of me as well. So the education fund, obviously, that's going to take care, of our teachers, those individuals who are working with our students on a daily basis. A majority of that money, the revenue that we have coming in for that is going to be our ADM. So again, that's crucial. How many kids we have in the seats when they do the count date is really going to fund, those people who are on the front lines working with our students to help, them be successful and our families to be successful. Also in that's going to hit all of our supplies. So, how can we make sure that our students have the supplies that they need to be successful and our teachers have the supplies that they can be successful so that our students can do a really nice job on a daily basis. The next fund is going to be our operations fund. So operations fund, again, that's going to be focused more on not instruction or those individuals who are working daily with our students. So our non-certified staff, utilities, transportation, supplies that go to help make sure that we're doing everything we can, now that COVID is happening to keep our students and our faculty safe. That's going to be mostly funded through tax revenue. Property tax is going to be one of the biggest things that's going to fund that. I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. The big thing about the education fund and the operations fund, obviously we don't pull in enough in the operations fund to make sure that, we have all the expenditures that we have going out covered. So we have to do a transfer from the education fund to the operations fund. So when I'm building the budget, I'm looking at the 2 different funds, but then looking how much money are we going to need to pull from the education fund to the operations fund to make sure that both funds are funded appropriately so that we can make sure that we are successful with everything that we're trying to do with our certified staff, our non-certified staff, again, utilities and all of those things. So those 2 funds are going to kind of go hand in hand. And then obviously our debt service fund, we're going to have that fund to pay off debt and then bond issues that we currently have. So right now, the 2 big ones, the most recent ones, we have the high school field house, and then obviously the Brooklyn STEM Academy project that we have going on there. So those are our 3 funds. And then, at the end of it, we've got our rainy day fund. And right now we have over $2 million in our rainy day fund. We have not touched that this year. We have no plans to touch that money. That's just, in case something comes up, we've got those funds to help support the different funds that we have that are coming in. So again, education is going to fund the operations with what's not covered. Debt service is kind of on its own. And then we have the rainy day fund to collect those extra dollars that we don't spend in any of the other funds. So just a little bit more on school finance. Obviously, the budget that we created for 2021, it's defined as a submission of expenditures. So money that we have going out, and then the revenue that we have coming in based on historical data. So again, when I was building the budget, I wasn't just looking at forecasting next year what that's going to look like. We looked at last year, we looked at previous years to make sure that the trend line that we had going was going to help us be successful in the 2021 budget that we developed moving forward. And again, that is just going to help us lay out future projects to determine the annual appropriations for the education operations and debt service that I spoke to on the previous slide. I think the big thing to remember when we start talking about the budget is the budget gives us the authority to spend. So when I build the budget, we're looking at those projections, we're looking at ADM, we're looking at the tax revenue that we have coming in. That gives us the authority to spend, but it's our fiscal responsibility to make sure that we have the cash balance to be able to spend it. So the cash balance is really going to drive that ability for us to be able to spend the money that we think we need to spend on our students, on our staff, on our buildings, all those things that really help Martinsville be the greatest school corporation that we're currently in. So next thing, the budget that we currently built, it has over 2,000 line items in it. And that goes from supplies for each elementary school. It goes for cost, gas for transportation, tires, different things like that. So we're really breaking that down on a line by line basis. And I'll get into that a little bit more on my next slide so that we really have a good idea of the amount of money that we think we need to spend. But also, again, we have to make sure that we have the cash balance so that we have the ability in that. So those two things are going to be really important. And then finally, here in September, we'll be doing some more things with the budget. But now October board meeting, that's when I will bring the final budget to you, and then you will vote to approve it. And then we will submit that to DLGF, and then they take the necessary steps that they need to. And then we will get what's called a 1782 notice, and that will give us a breakdown of everything that we submitted the budget. There may be a few changes to it based off of the money that we're going to receive, but that 1782 notice will be our final notice to know what we have to spend. And then again, it's up to us to be fiscally responsible to make sure that we stay within the budget, to make sure that everything's taken care of in terms of students, staff, and in our buildings. So again, I spoke a little bit just in the previous slide about building the budget. This is my first year building the budget, and obviously, almost like everything else, COVID's thrown a wrench in everything. So I've really spent a lot of time, extra time, reaching out to colleagues and other corporations who have built the budget, and I've really worked on seeing what they're doing, how they're analyzing the trends, and how COVID's impacting their school corporations. Again, every school corporation is different, and I thought it was important when building the budget to make sure that I had all the knowledge from individuals who have been building budgets for years, to make sure that our budget was, again, fundamentally sound and we could take care of our students and our teachers and our families. So to speak a little bit about that, again, over 2,000 plus line items. We broke everything down to make sure that we understood exactly what we needed to help our students and staff be successful. Obviously, that takes a lot of time. Spent a lot of time looking at last year's budget. Those line items, looked at the previous years, just to make sure that I had a good concept of what Martinsville's historical data told me, so that we could build a fundamentally sound budget for 2021. So talked a little bit about that with the historical expenditures. Also looking at end of year estimates. So again, kind of projecting a little bit. That's a big thing about building a budget, looking where we're currently at, but also looking at where we're going to be at in 6 months at the end of the year so that we can carry that over to the incoming budget. And that was big. Obviously, a difficult piece of that is, we left school on March the 13th. So a lot of the money, those expenditures that we would have had, going out, we didn't have going out. So that took some time to make sure that I understood from previous budgets what the expectation would be for the 2021 budget to make sure that we hit all of the necessary stops along the way, so that we didn't miss anything. So again, those end of year estimates, again, a lot of forecasting, a lot of projecting, but that went into it as well. Staff changes, that's going to be a big one. Obviously, in just a second on the next slide, you'll see what makes up most of the education fund. So, when we look at staff changes, we keep a spreadsheet that shows every staff member that may have retired, a staff member that may have decided to move on. And we're looking at the staff member that's no longer with us and the new staff member that we bring in. And also looking at, depending on class sizes and different things like that, really looking at, if we don't have to replace something here, what's that cost savings going to be for us? So again, everything's broken down, and we have our thumb on everything in terms of staffing and the savings that we may be bringing in. But again, sometimes, we have to replace someone and possibly based on their degree and years of experience, maybe spend a little bit more. But again, that all goes into the budget to ensure that we're fiscally responsible and more importantly, I think equitable across all of our 10 buildings that we have in the corporation, because we want to make sure that, the students at Smith are going to get the same experience that they might get at Bell in terms of staffing and needs that go into the budget. So that was big in building the 2021 budget. Increase in utilities. Again, we weren't in school, from March 13th on, so we weren't spending in utilities like we may have been. So it was really important for me to go back to the previous budget and budgets before that to make sure that I had a good grasp on, what those utility costs might be. And then again, making sure that we budget appropriately so that if there is an increase in those utilities, or our property insurance and just different things like that, to make sure that our budget can cover anything that might happen, especially with COVID. Again, I go back to when I was in high school, gas was really cheap. But then again, we had the spike because of 9/11. So there's always those little things that may happen. And when we built the 2021 budget, we've looked at all of those items to make sure that each line item has enough in it to account for anything that may happen. Preventative maintenance needs. And I'll get to this later in my preview and in some future slides. But you guys as a board have done a really nice job of making sure that we are taking care of our buildings so that they're in good shape. And I'll speak again a little bit to that in a few more slides, but working with Sam, our director of building and grounds, to make sure that, hey, a roof project, what are we going to need? What's coming up down the road so that we can make sure that we take care of our buildings so that our students can have the best experience that they can have. One of the biggest things that I'll really be focusing on as we move into this upcoming school year, obviously I haven't had as much time as I would like to, but really having those conversations on a quarterly basis, but also a monthly basis with our directors and then our principals. Obviously our principals, they're in the buildings, they know what our students and our teachers need to be successful. So I really want to spend a lot of time having conversations with them in future budgets, but also had those conversations in the current budget so that I have a good grasp of where we're at, the needs that our principals and our directors have, so that we can build those into those line items to make sure that everybody's taken care of. And then the final one, our annual debt payments. We had some debt that fell off this previous cycle, and then obviously we took on some new debt, but a lot of people don't understand that. They think about their home and having debt. For us, having debt is good because it helps control our tax rates and different things like that. So I'll speak a little bit more to that in a couple slides about how debt is really going to help us to make sure that not only our taxpayers have a low rate, we have one of the lowest rates around, and that's really good for them. And we can use that debt to get projects done to help our students and our staff and faculty be successful. So the education fund, we spoke a little bit about that with the expenditures. We'll look a little bit about the revenue that comes in. So the biggest thing for the education fund is going to be what the state calls basic grant. And what the basic grant is going to be is our ADM. So last year we got approximately $6,300 per student. That's just on average, and got a little bit more for special education students in some different areas, but that was $6,300. So the number of students that we have enrolled on count date times that number is going to give us our basic grant. So how much money that we really have coming in. Outside of that, obviously local income taxes, and then we have some miscellaneous revenue, license, excise tax, interest, and then some student fees. So all of that is really going to fund the education budget that will support students and support our staff daily to help them be as successful as they can be. When you go over to the operations fund, the biggest pot of money that we have coming in is local property tax. We do the education transfer. Last year, we were around 11.6% transferring over from the education fund to the operations fund. The state's recommendation is to be below 15%. Anything higher than 15%, you have to go and have a conversation with them. We will be below 15% again this year, just like we were last year for that education fund transfer over to the operations fund to make sure that we can cover all of those expenditures that are going out. Also with the operations fund, we have the miscellaneous revenue coming in as well. Obviously, that's not going to make up the large piece of the pie as our local property tax and that education fund transfer is really going to be the two pieces of the pie that fund that. Our final one, debt service, again, local property tax, and then that miscellaneous revenue will really be the funds that are going to bring in the revenue for those for that fund, and then also kind of wraps up the other three funds that we have. All right, so building the budget, obviously the education fund is critical, right? Because that's the fund that's going to take care of our students and it's going to take care of our staff to make sure that they're learning at a high level and they can be successful on a daily basis. So what we did to kind of project out is going into what's called a Form 54, and we are able to put in the number of students that we think we will have enrolled when they do count date. And then it gives us a breakdown of the revenue that we think will be coming in for the education fund. So I wanted to show you, there's a red line around fiscal year 2020-21. And that number was the number that we used when building the education fund. So you'll notice there's a little bit of a difference, obviously, in last year's budget and the projected budget that we will have for 2021. So I want you guys to really have a good understanding of why those numbers are different, and it comes down to enrollment. So if you look at ADM down at the bottom for fiscal year 2019-2020, it was projected that we would have 4,202 students when we did count date. And again, with COVID and everything that's going on right now, we wanted to make sure that we didn't overestimate those numbers. And I'll explain a little bit more about how we kind of come up with that in just a second. But when I built this budget, I went into the Form 54 calculation using 4,000 students. I didn't just pull 4,000 students, out of thin air. Again, looking at trends. So went back to look at what our enrollment was in previous years to kind of get a good understanding of where we are currently at and where we were at in previous years. So 4,000 students is the number that we used to build that. And you'll see that obviously there's a difference there in the funding that will be coming in. So again, if you go back to that one of those first slides that I showed you, again, just because this is what we're projecting, it doesn't give us the authority to spend that money. So again, this is what we're projecting. This is kind of the number that we have. But again, we never want to spend up to that line item because we want to make sure we're fiscally responsible and equitable across the corporation. So just because that's the number we're using for the budget, doesn't mean that that's what we're going to spend up to. And that's been practiced in previous years as well. That's one of the reasons why the rainy day fund is currently where it's at with over $2 million in it, because we've been able to take some of those excess funds from other funds and bring them into the rainy day fund. So does anybody have any questions on those two numbers and kind of where we're currently at?
No, sir. I don't.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Steve. All right. So expenditures going out. We talked about the revenue that we have coming in. Let's talk about the funds that we have going out for the education operations and debt service. So again, the education fund is going to take care of our staff, who are in buildings and taking care of kids. So our teachers and everybody that's doing a phenomenal job. And again, supplies. So we want to make sure all of our students have the supplies that they need to be successful. So building the 2021 budget based on COVID-19 and knowing that there are going to be some things that we're going to have to purchase to make sure that our students and staff are successful. That has all been taken into account to make sure that the education fund has in it what it needs for everyone to be able to do the job that they need to do so that students learn at a high level. With that, again, technology is a bit of what we're doing. Again, you as a board did a phenomenal job of laying the groundwork to get us to the point of being able to go one-to-one. Have a lot of former colleagues and friends who are in other school corporations who are trying to do one-to-one and they don't have the foundation that they need. So thank you for taking those steps to make sure that we have the technology that we need for Brian and his team to be able to do what they need to do on a daily basis. Operations fund, again, that's really going to work with those things that aren't necessarily going on daily in the classroom. So those non-certified staff members who are working tirelessly, doing a phenomenal job with our kiddos. Again, utilities, repairs, and then I think a lot of things that the average person doesn't think of. We still have to pay insurance. There's fuel. There's just everything that goes into that to make sure that we can be successful and the school can run on a daily basis. And then our debt service, obviously, we want to be able to make sure that we can pay for the debt that we currently have. So major construction and bonds. So think to the previous two bond issues that we just did. The first one for Brooklyn, seems like those two are kind of running together, even though that was the first one. And then obviously, at the high school. So we're really excited to see those two projects take off. And the debt service fund will make sure that we can take care of those two projects and previous projects that you guys have approved as a board. All right, going into staffing increase and contributions. So, staffing is going to make up over 90% of the education fund because we have to make sure that we can take care of our teachers and those individuals who are working with our students on a daily basis. So for 1920, seems like we're already talking about last school year. Last school year, we were able to go in and after going through collective bargaining, which will start September the 15th, that's where we as a corporation sits down with our teachers association and we look at the teacher's contract and we look at raises and different things like that. So just a little history there from last year. Our teachers were able to get $1,000 step. So they all got $1,000. And then we really wanted to, as a corporation and as a union, to be able to look at our starting teacher pay. So before this year, we were at $37,500. That's what a first-year teacher would have made. And we spent a great deal of time. And again, want to thank the association for really working with us to make sure that we could get this done. we looked at surrounding corporations and wanted to see what they were offering their first year teachers. So after a lot of discussion and really good conversations, we felt like a bump in $2,000 from $37,500 to $39,500 would be appropriate to try to draw in the best teachers that we could. And I'll be honest with you, staffing has been crazy with COVID and everything, but we have brought in some phenomenal first year teachers, and we've also been able to bring in some phenomenal, maybe not veteran teachers, but teachers who have experience. And it really goes to what we were able to do last year through bargaining. So that's currently where we were at. And then to take care of our non-certified staff, they are phenomenal, as well as our teachers. They work tirelessly to make sure that our kiddos are taken care of. So just some of the different things that we were able to do last school year on that 2020 budget. We were able to give all of those staff members, if they qualified, a stipend. We were able to do that. That's similar to what we've done in previous years, but we were excited to be able to honor that. They also were able to continue to get that step in years of service based on the non-certified handbook that we have. And then we were able to give an additional quarter raise on top of that for all of those staff members. So again, we really wanted to make sure that we thank those individuals for all the hard work that they do. But again, to be able to bring in phenomenal individuals to work with our students, and not only our students, but our custodial service, maintenance, bus drivers, subs, everybody, so that our students and our teachers get the best experience that they can have. One of the biggest, I think, components of budgeting that a lot of people don't think of or really don't take into consideration is all of the other contributions that staff members are able to get outside of just their salary. So outside of maybe that $39,500 salary that a first year teacher is going to get, they're also, they're getting a lot of other benefits. Some of those benefits I just want to touch on that they're going to receive PERF. So our non-certified staff members who qualify, we put in 11.2% of their salary on a check by check basis. So that's another benefit that they're getting by being employed by the MSD of Martinsville. TURF is for our teachers, teacher retirement fund. So we're putting in 8.5% into their retirement to make sure that when they do retire, that they're taken care of. A 401A match, so very similar to outside of the education world, 401k. So anyone who elects to enroll in that, we are going to match up to 3% of their salary into that, of what they put in. So again, that's another perk that a lot of our teachers take advantage of, and we're glad to offer that to them. I think one of the most exciting things for me when I took this position was I had the opportunity to go around and meet with all of our teachers who elected to sign up. And what we did is we sat down and looked at their benefits and wanted to make sure that what they thought they were getting, we were actually honoring. So it was a really nice opportunity to meet them and really make sure that they're able to take away from the MSD of Martinsville everything that they can as an employee, because again, they work extremely hard and we want to make sure that they're taken care of. Final other benefit that we do offer for our staff members that again goes into the 2021 budget that a lot of people don't think we have to account for is Aviva. So when they retire, they can use that on different healthcare items. We put 1% into all of our teachers' Aviva funds. So if you look down at the bottom, for full-time employees, those extra benefits that we're going to offer outside of their hourly rate or their teacher salary, it adds up to over 22% of the cost, and that's not even talking about healthcare and dental. So when building the 2021 budget, looking at the raises that we were able to give, but then again making sure that we can fund all of those other benefits that we have to take care of for our staff members with the increase in salary. So we've talked a little bit about kind of budget 101 and funding expenditures revenue. This is where, again, you as a board have done a phenomenal job in previous years and previous budgets to make sure that our facilities are top notch. I look at what's going on at the high school and at Brooklyn. and all of the other buildings that we have. And we have phenomenal programs and we have phenomenal buildings. And that's because of you and Sam and our maintenance crew and custodial crew. They do a great job. So I wanted to touch on just some of the improvements that you guys have approved over time to make sure that we're in a really good spot right now, so that if something does come up, due to COVID or there's a spike here, that we are in really good financial standpoint, but also our facilities are in a phenomenal standpoint as well. So as a district, and again, these are just not individual buildings, but just as a group, all exterior lighting has been replaced. 7 rooftop units have been replaced. And we were able to put in 11 new light poles. Now, one might think 11 new light poles. I go back to my time at Bell. We have over 40 buses that come in the back part of the lot. And in the morning, it can be pretty dark out there. And by being able to put light poles in out there, it increases, student safety to make sure that they can get on and off the bus in a safe manner. So that's something that doesn't seem like a lot of money, but it's something that's really going to help our kids. The Activate Clinic, we were able to put in a new entrance and window there to make sure that it's safe and those folks are taken care of. Kind of grouped all of these together at the elementary level as well. Flooring is a big cost to the corporation. You got to make sure you take care of the floors so that they look nice. Door wraps, that's probably one of those items that you think, door wraps, well, people can't see in the building. So when you're sitting outside of door 1 and you don't want to see who's in the building, that's something that can help keep our kiddos safe. Obviously the STEM building addition, we did a lot of office remodels to make sure that our students and our faculty were safe. Special education room build outs to make sure that our special education students and staff have everything that they need to take place. And something that I'm really excited to see is the bleacher improvements that we were able to do. So we've got a lot of bleacher improvements going on at the elementary level, also at Bell that I'll talk to in just a second, and then obviously at the high school. So those are things that, really don't seem like they're that big, but when someone walks into your building and they see those bleachers and they look really nice, it really just sets us apart from everyone else that we have coming into our buildings. And then obviously building roofs and replacement. We have to make sure that we put appropriate funds into our roofs to make sure that, obviously they're not leaking and different things like that. So you as a board have done a phenomenal job of working with Sam to make sure that we can take care of our roofs and we're in good shape there. Transitioning over to the secondary level, at Bell, obviously flooring, bleacher, the special education room build out, and then bathrooms. Sam has spent a lot of time making sure that our bathrooms are up to date and they look good. Over at John R. Wooden, just completed the HVAC upgrade with an addition of 23 units. Hot water boilers, again, that's something a lot of people think. Hot water boilers, that costs a lot of money, but again, it helps make sure that John R. Wooden can function for our students and our staff. And again, special education build out, and then we worked on the football sprinkler system outside. MHS, they had a lot of projects going on this summer. A new cooling tower, one of the Hammonds building, so move them from the CEC over back on campus at the high school. We're really excited about that, so that our high school staff can really work side by side with those students and our faculty. Obviously, we have the field house coming. The bleachers are going to be phenomenal. Can't wait for them to get in. And then flooring and roofing. So again, a lot of those items are things that the average person doesn't think that goes into the budget, but those are important items that cost a lot of money to make sure that our facilities are top notch, so that our students and staff again can be successful, not only in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. All right, so kind of next steps. The budget's built, it's done. Obviously, we're still watching enrollment a little bit here as we don't have a confirmed count date of what that might look at. So as of right now, it's done. Everything's ready to go, but we'll be watching enrollment to see if there's any tweaks that need to happen. So kind of the next things that you can look forward to as a board, we will be posting our bus replacement and the old, what's called the CPF, but our capital assets plan. We'll be posting that on Gateway and then also on our website. That takes care of kind of checking the box for our taxpayers so that they know what future projects we have coming down the road in terms of bus replacement and those other projects that we want to continue to do to make sure that we're successful. Tonight, we're going to be asking for you guys to vote on approval of the budget appropriation. Again, you're not approving the budget. You're just approving, giving us an opportunity to post it in DLGF and take the necessary steps that we need to make sure that we check all of our boxes and hit the deadlines that we have to. Coming up in September, we will have a budget hearing that will be open to the public. So that's where I will go into more detail what the budget looks like and go into more of those line items and different things. So that'll be coming in September. We also have to ask for approval by you as a board to transfer those funds that I talked about previously from the education fund over to the operations fund to make sure that the operations fund is funded appropriately. So I'll be asking for approval to do that. We'll do that at the September board meeting as well. And then in October, our board meeting, that's when everything is going to kind of come together. And seems like since November, all of this work and time can kind of be done for the 2021 budget, and then we'll get started on next year. So approval of the bus replacement capital assets plan, and then finally the budget. That's where you'll vote on approving that. After we have that meeting, then we will take the necessary steps that we need to in Gateway, which Gateway is where we input everything, and then we'll turn it over to them. And then again, we'll get what's called a 1782 notice to kind of see where we fall with what we projected and what we submitted to them. All right, and then just some final steps here. I just wanted you guys to have a good understanding of where we ended July of 31st of 2020. At the end of July 2020, we were sitting on $25,332,265.71. So again, because of the hard work by you as a board, making sure that we're spending appropriately, we are in very, very good financial situation, very similar to what I talked to about the rainy day fund on those previous slides. My goal and Dr. Arthur's goal and Mr. Buckler is to continue to be fiscally responsible, but equitable when we're looking at budgets and spending. We want to make sure that we're taking care of our teachers, our staff, everybody, but we're fiscally responsible with the times that we're in. So COVID-19, again, we don't know what's really going to happen with that, but it is in the forefront of every decision that we make to make sure that we're fiscally responsible and equitable. Again, talked a little bit about that with COVID-19, but again, what impact that's going to have on ADM and what that might look like moving forward. So I spoke a little bit earlier about kind of that network of people that I have outside of, just me in the business office, but really reaching out to those folks who have been doing budgets for an extremely long time and kind of seeing how it's impacting, ADM is impacting their budget and just different things that they're trying to do. The one thing that we have really moved forward with or done to help offset some of those costs for COVID-19 is we have applied for some different grants. And I'm excited to say that, obviously we got a CARES grant, which is going to help with COVID-19 related expenses. So all those things that we're trying to do on a daily basis with cleaning and different things, masks, to make sure that our buildings are safe, can come out of those funds. So that's going to help with different expenditures that we had for the previous budget and budgets moving forward. The gear grant, I'm excited to announce that we got that this week, and we'll be sharing more information about that. And then the final grant that some school corporations did not take advantage of is a FEMA grant. So sometimes, people think of FEMA and they think of hurricanes and natural disasters, but they've opened up a FEMA grant for schools to get 75% of any of those expenditures that they had to spend that are related to COVID-19. So I've been working with Whitney, our corporation treasurer, and then all of our directors to compile a list so that we can submit for our FEMA grant to get 75% reimbursement back on a lot of those items that we were not able to put into CARES or we didn't put into CARES, so that we're making sure that, again, we're not just spending money that was already budgeted. We're able to get some of those funds back to take care of our students and our staff. And then our ultimate goal for any budget is to try to maintain a 10 to 20% cash balance. And you as a board have done a phenomenal job of doing that. And that is our goal moving forward, to make sure that we have a good cash balance moving forward as a school corporation. That is all I have before we go into, obviously our September budget hearing, where we'll talk more in detail about the budget, but just kind of a rundown of the steps that we took to build a fiscally responsible and equitable 2021 budget for our students, for our staff, and our facilities and community. So.
Hey, Jeremy, just to make sure some of our viewers know, because as someone who does a budget, I do it January to December, but the school world goes on a different budget, correct? It starts June 1st and ends July 31st. Is that correct? Is that a budget year that we're working on?
Jeremy, if I can pipe in.
Yeah, you cut out a little bit, Michelle. I couldn't hear
I'm
you
sorry.
very good. So
And to answer that question, Michelle, there are actually multiple, because we receive federal grant money and we also receive state money. And so the majority of what Jeremy is speaking about today are state dollars. So they do run on a January to December cycle. So this will be money that we would have access to in January. But there are other grant cycles within the school district that run July to June. And so all of our federal dollars are on a 6-month different cycle. So if it couldn't be any more confusing, we're always balancing two sets of resources at the same time and kind of projecting out, how do we make this work when you kind of don't know how much money is going to come in on the next cycle, but you still have some left from the old cycle. But yes, these dollars that he's talking about today, which are the education fund and the operations fund, are January to December. And one other just additional comment, the 25 million actually that's on the screen right now, I just also want to remind people that is as of July 31st, and we still have spending from now until the end of until the end of December. So that 25 million is not 25 million that's going to go into next year's budget. That number will go down because we still have basically 6 months of bills to pay.
Thank you.
And
If I may, real quick, first of all, I want to congratulate Mr. Ogden for all his efforts and everything. Certainly appreciate everything. But I know we're limited on time, but I had a couple questions. Number one, can we as a board have a copy of this presentation that we viewed tonight?
yes, Steve, it's I put it in the board agenda shared folder, but I'll email a copy of it to you as soon as we're done with the second meeting. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And then secondly, I noticed there's no media here unless they're watching on YouTube. This question will be from Ms. Burke. Will a press release be made concerning this meeting that we just had?
Yes, I'll send out information tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, I apologize if I interrupted you.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine.
I have a quick question on the medical insurance. I mean, you mentioned that, have you met to see if it's going to increase, or do you have an allowance in there to cover that, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, so we got our new rates, and I actually sent those out to our staff members. And it's hard with the different plans to give each plan had a little bit of a different increase. But when we looked at it overall, it was about a 6% increase for those rates. And that was pretty consistent with what we've seen last year as well. So yeah, we're actually in open enrollment right now for staff members. So we were able to share the breakdown for a 9, 10, 11, and 12-month employee to kind of see where that fell.
So how that would affect the budget and stuff. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else?
Dave,
Okay.
you want to-
Dave does, but he's on mute. We can't hear you.
Lower left, Dave, mute or unmute.
How's that? Is that better?
There you go.
Yeah.
That's better, Dave.
Yeah, wonder what happened. I don't know what happened. But in reference and going to my second page, Jeremy, and I know it's things we've talked about, that exterior lighting, boy, and the new light poles that were put in. Yeah, the bleachers are going to be wonderful and all that, but boy, the safety of just of going around our facilities for our students, daytime grandparents nights, all that sort of stuff, just making everything so wonderful. So I'm glad those 11 new poles got put in. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And I really want to thank Sam Arns, our director of maintenance. He does a phenomenal job of taking, hey, here's your budget. And he really gets the most out of a budget. So a lot of these projects that we were able to do, some of them may have been extra or different things with money. But Sam does a phenomenal job, and really enjoy working with him, and hope to be able to do similar things in future budgets. So kudos to Sam. He does a really nice job.
Pass that on to him, would you please? I'm sure he will.
I will. Thank you, Dave.
Hey, Jeremy.
Yeah.
The July 31st budget that we have of 25 million, or not budget, but balance.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how that compares to what our July 31st balance was in the previous 2 years?
I don't have that number right off the top of I've got it, but I don't have it in front of me. But that's something I can share with you. Okay. Yeah. I'm sitting in my son's bedroom right now, and I've got spreadsheets all over on the floor that you can't see. So no, I do know that amount. I just don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, okay. I know it. Yeah. I'll get it for you.
Don, I can put a little bit of light on that, because I pay attention to those monthly finance reports. And so we're about exactly where we were last year at this exact same time. We're just a little over 50%, we're between 50 and 60% on our spending. And that's a pretty normal number for this time of year. Well, Jeremy did mention that we've had some cost savings because of COVID with people not being around. Those cost savings would be with our own fuel for our bus fleet, as well as some utilities, but we couldn't completely shut everything down, and we did continue to pay all employees, which is the majority of our expense. So he's right in that we did save some money, but we didn't save a great deal. Most of that money got, as you think about savings, it ended up turning into costs for things that we need to do for COVID. So in my opinion, it's kind of a wash. Not having kids here, we didn't necessarily save a lot of money because we ended up having to turn around and spend it on things to get ready for this next school year. But I think as Jeremy gives you those numbers, you'll see we're pretty much in the same spot we were last year.
Okay.
Questions?
Well, again,
just real quick, bus replacement. How many buses are we looking at this year?
It's funny. We sat down with Dennis, and we are looking at approximately 3-ish. We're still finalizing that number, but that's what we're looking at. Again, we're going to be able to trade some old buses in as well. So depending on what that value comes out to be, but yeah, we'll have more information for you once we share the finalized CPF and bus replacement.
Thank you.
That's a great question. And I would also just like to add, just so folks understand, we've had a major build out of 2 summers. I mean, this school district, in terms of contracted jobs, construction, roofs, air conditioning, boilers, things that, you don't replace typically for 25, 30 years. And like Jeremy said earlier, you guys have done a really nice job of helping approve projects and that funding to get those things taken care of. And that puts us in a really good position, knowing that we're having some struggles projecting all the exact numbers that we need to project right now with COVID. So it's helpful to know that we're not going to be, at any point in the next year, 2 or 3, in a position where we're replacing a bunch of air conditioning systems or roofs again. We're in really good shape with all of that. So it's going to allow us to maybe slow down a little bit on some construction projects for a minute here to make sure that we don't get ourselves in a position with reduced budgets or those kinds of things from the state. So I hope that doesn't happen, but if it were, it might mean instead of buying 3 buses, we buy 2 this year, those kinds of things. So we have some room to tweak. And, our fleet is in amazing shape. So, those are things we can do for 1 year, perhaps 2 years, if we have to, if we get into any kind of crunch with the state not producing the amount of money that they've promised. I think it's important to share that with everybody.
Another thing that's noticed in driving around at the schools is parking lots,
Yes.
Especially the high school. How much did we have a lot of money that went into our parking lot, or was that because of all the construction that we benefited from it? You understand my question?
Yeah, we had some proposed money to go into that, but we also had some money that was left over. Again, I don't know the exact amount off the top of my head, but when I met with Sam, that was one item that we did have some funds left over, but you guys had also already approved some of those projects to take place. But you're absolutely right. When you roll up on one of the schools and you see a good looking parking lot, it really sets the tone. So, yep.
I think at this time, if our questions are complete for the moment, we probably need to take a break and transition into our next meeting. So Mr. Freeze, if you want to step in and tell us what we need to do next, do we need to stay on, or would you like for us to